Good morning and welcome to Missoula Real Estate Today. This is Denny Bedard. Missoula Real Estate Today is presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate. And now, Missoula Real Estate Today on News Talk, KGVO. Well, thank you for helping us ring out the old, the final weekend of 2019. Always nice to have you with us on Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate. Always brings us great guests. A guest that we had on not terribly long ago was Robert Montes. Robert's an investment advisor with Primerica. Welcome back to the show, Robert.
It's great to be back. I didn't even think that it was the last weekend of the year.
Yeah, I know.
2020.
Hard to get your head around that for a lot of people. But
Yep.
and an area of Primerica services we did not have time to cover on your last visit here was identity theft. And that will be the focus of today's program. But first, we'll do a refresher course. What is Primerica and how does it differ from other companies in its category?
Yeah, thanks for having me again, Denny. So
sir.
Primerica, as a refresher, we are a financial services company. We really focus on goal-based investment solutions for Main Street, Middle America. So helping clients identify what their specific goals are and then putting together a financial game plan to implement those solutions and make them a reality.
And your background, what led you to being a Primerica representative?
Yeah, great question again. So I was a client way back in the day, and the advisor I was working with just saw that I was interested in learning more about investing. And so I was working at a coffee shop in college, and we were talking on my lunch break one day about investing. And so he was the first person that helped me get my own stuff squared away and done correctly. And then just ultimately saw I wanted to learn more and said, hey, come work in my office part-time. You can earn while you learn, and our company will pay for you to get licensed. So that was the beginning of that. And I did this full-time for about 6 years, took a break, spent 4 years in the military in the Special Operations Committee with the 75th Ranger Regiment, deployed and did all that fun stuff. But I knew I was going to come back and do this. And so been back now for about 4 years, just opened my own office. That's new since we
Congratulations.
spoke.
And where is that located?
That's here in Missoula,
very
off
good.
of Broadway, right next to Murdoch's off of Broadway.
Oh,
So,
sure, yeah.
Yeah, just opened my own office, and it's been great being back.
All right, I'll have to stop by for a tour.
Hey, you're more than welcome. I'll be happy to. We'll get you a cup of coffee or something. while
Yes,
you're in
sir. All right, I'm looking forward to that. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, we talked about a lot of Primerica services that you offer, Robert, but we just really didn't get to identity theft, and it's huge, and it's worth pretty much dedicating a whole program to. Most common definition: somebody got a hold of one of my credit card numbers and made some purchases. That's true, but there are many other ways, kinds of identity theft. Can you start with sort of a broad brush and describe what some of those are, and we'll dig deeper into each one from there as we go along.
Well, if you think about it, Denny, identity theft is such a big topic in that so much of our information and who we are is done electronically now. And so it used to be, oh no, someone got into my bank account, someone accessed my credit card. And that's honestly the best thing that can happen if someone's going to steal anything from you, because it's such an easy fix. But what really gets bigger and where people are really struggling is that you have people who will steal your information and use it to apply for benefits. They'll apply for your tax return. They will, they'll go out there and they will start renting or try to make big purchases in your name. And these are all things that not only affect you immediately, but if someone went out there, used your identity to rent an apartment, let's say, and then they decided to not pay the rent, well, that would negatively come back and affect you, and your credit score and your ability to rent or to buy a home would then be impacted. And that's where you really see issues when it comes to identity theft. It's the long-term effects that happen and that most people don't even know they are the victim of until it's too late, and all of a sudden you're dealing with these negative repercussions.
Yeah, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I noticed on one of my credit cards that I bought a lot of drinks for some guy in Germany, I believe.
Guy, right?
Yeah.
He had a great time.
He did have a great time. The credit card company, obviously made it square, made it right, and I want to believe that nothing ever happened. Nothing came of it beyond that. But to your point, online banking, food deliveries, more and more purchases with debit and credit cards.
Yeah.
there's a lot more low-hanging fruit out there for thieves than there was,
It is.
gosh,
And,
even 5 or 10 years ago.
well, when we look at how just big of a problem this has become, where and the people who are out there who are stealing people's information, they're extremely resourceful. I mean, you have huge companies that have had billions of dollars that have been lost because of this. You have, Equifax going through an entire process where, their data was compromised, and that affects millions of people. And so this is a real story. I have a client of mine who years back, he got stopped on a normal traffic stop and ended up getting arrested because someone had stolen his identity, gotten picked up on drug charges, and used his alias to say that, oh, this is me. So he got processed, went through everything. So my client had an outstanding warrant for his name that he had no idea about until he got picked up and taken to jail. And so these are the types of things that people don't think of, is that it's much bigger than someone stole money out of my account. Of course, that's frustrating. You'll get that back. Banks are so on top of that as far as resolving it. It's those bigger issues that, and this same client, him and his wife bought a house about 2 years ago. And this was years and years later, but that's still, there were still things showing up on their credit that almost prevented them from qualifying for the loan that they were after to be able to buy a home. And so that's the kind of things that we want to protect against. And when I'm talking to people about identity theft, protecting themselves from it, and even just how it affects their credit as a whole, it's the much bigger things that people probably aren't thinking about. They're thinking of, someone stole some money. They're not thinking someone's using my information and filing my tax return, taking that return, and then now you have to deal with the IRS to prove that you didn't get that money. That's a big issue right there.
This is Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate, and our guest, Robert Montes, investment advisor with Primerica. It's frustrating, isn't it? This isn't like if somebody's going to a thief in this category. This isn't like throwing a brick through a window and opening the door of a convenience store and burglarizing at 3:00 in the morning. This takes some skill and intelligence, and doggone it, why can't you put that to good use?
Right.
It's
so frustrating. And I'm sure anyone who's out there, I have been on the do not call and registered so often and so many times. But then you get those, calls from the quote unquote Social Security office and administration there. And you're just like, come on, man. And it's so frustrating because as a consumer, I don't know about everyone else, but you feel almost powerless. You feel like you're fighting phantoms. Yeah. And how do you even stop it? Where do you even go to defend yourself? And then even if it's corrected, I think one of the worst things is the feeling of like, well, was justice ever served? Did this guy ever get caught? What happened there? Because there's this righteous like anger where you want to protect yourself, but you feel like you're almost powerless, because anyone who's ever been involved in this, they know that authorities and everyone will tell you, don't do anything about it. And they won't even provide you the information of who the person was so that you could. And so you feel like you're completely defenseless.
Is there a reason for that? Is this too much red tape, too much paperwork, or is it we don't want you to know because you might be vigilante, or what?
I think there's probably some vigilante to it, but I'll use me personally. I've had people steal money directly out of my checking account, just somehow got access to my account, and I was the only person registered to use this account, myself and my wife, and so I had to go into my bank. I won't say which bank it is, and basically I could show them, look, I have no access to this other account. Why would I move my money to that? Who is this person? It's not me, and they couldn't tell me. And I remember sitting there being so frustrated. And what do you do about that? Thankfully, I've had some identity theft protection, because that's a whole different type of, that's just theft. It wasn't my identity was stolen. It was just my account was compromised. Yeah. But I was able to go to the resources I had, tell them what happened, and they were able to walk me through exactly what I needed to do to get it corrected. And that felt better. But yeah, it's really frustrating to feel powerless when something like that's happening.
Yeah, and that's part of our mission this morning, is to kind of differentiate some of the what we consider identity theft and just getting hacked and having some money taken out. But we hear reports of major retailers getting hacked. It seems like there's at least a couple of those every year. If you were a customer of one of those businesses, what's the immediate risk to you?
So, as a customer, just because the way that our world is, there's not a whole lot that you can do other than the already things that most people are doing. I mean, there's a reason we all have chips on our cards now. That makes it much, much harder for people to steal any information from our credit cards. But really, you got to go about your day-to-day life. You probably aren't going to stop anyone from making a move on a big retailer. And if somehow your identity is compromised, there's things that you can do at the individual level to protect against that. One is having some type of identity theft protection in place, and we'll talk about that. Another thing is just keeping track of what's on your credit. So everybody can get a free credit report from all 3 credit bureaus once per year. You can spread them out where you can either do them all at once, or you can do one every couple of months. And so that way you can see what's showing on your credit so that you can become aware if something does happen and you're not you're not reacting to it, you're proactively dealing with it. And the other thing too is that when there's big issues like that, justice delayed is not justice denied. And so you see it even like with what's going on with Equifax and their data breach, is that they're in the middle of a huge, I think it's a $425 million settlement where they're settling with people who suffered because of this. And I know this has been years ago, and obviously that didn't help the people at the time, but people are getting reimbursed for what's happened, and Equifax is taking and owning up to that. So they are trying to correct those injustices that have happened to people.
In cases like that, do the companies that are hacked try to explain as carefully or diplomatically as they can exactly what happened? I mean, they can say, I'm Mr. Montes, I'm very sorry it happened. We are taking additional measures to make sure that doesn't happen again. But do they ever really identify what it was that happened? And I guess the only reason you might want to know that is because, well, okay, I'm a customer of another service that has the same kinds of features that you guys did that got hacked.
Yeah. And it's been a few years since that happened. I remember reading about that when that first, when it was all coming into light. And if I remember right, and it's been so long, but it was something that should have been preventable. It was something where there was basically a few-month overlap where they weren't dealing with something internally, and it left a backdoor open, and someone took advantage of that. What I have seen with people who have had their data compromised using the Equifax data breach, for example, is Equifax has done a relatively good job of reaching out to people. They've offered free identity theft protection to these people who were compromised. So I think it was a minimum of a year they offered. There were some people who were getting 4 years, and some people were getting 10 years, and that was covered for free. So at least they're trying to take proactive steps to make sure that if your data was compromised, they now have tools in place to identify anything that is going on that's nefarious if someone's trying to use your information.
Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate, and our guest is Robert Montes, an investment advisor representative with Primerica. Had Robert on the show once before, a few months back, but we just never really got into one of the services that Primerica can help you with, identity theft. So, Robert, if your personal computer is hacked, am I talking about an entirely different ballgame here? Does it produce a whole other set of concerns, or can it?
I would think it just depends on what you have on it. And so for me, if my personal computer was hacked, the only issue would be that I have everything on my Google shared drive. Now, thankfully, I could just change my password and be okay there. But I think you still run into a lot of the same issues, is that most of us on our personal computers, we feel safe. It's like our home. We feel like it's our sanctuary. Nothing bad can happen. So we're a little bit lax with how we keep things there. But if someone has access to things such as, I know on my shared drive, and I probably shouldn't say this, is bad, but I have personally identifying information such as social saved. I have my daughter's birth certificate, my son's birth certificate, because I want it easily accessible. So I think you're still kind of leaning to the same challenges there, is that if someone gets that information, then they can just turn right around and they can go out and they can resell it, or they can, and that's what you see happening a lot. We were talking a little bit before we got started, is how people, using the dark web, and that's this not taboo, that's the wrong word, but it's this mysterious, the dark web. What is that? And for people,
why don't we just go there now? Let's go ahead and explain that. I'll bookmark where we were, but yeah, that is you hear that on. We run ads on this radio station, how to protect yourself against the dark web. A lot of it is the companies like Barracuda, for example, and things like that. But Yeah, what is the dark web exactly? It does have a scary sound.
So the dark web, and I'm going to laugh because you guys have to remember I'm an investment advisor, not a computer person.
No,
So the
understood.
computer listener, the computer people out there are going to be like, oh my gosh, he butchered that. But if we think of the web, we basically have three sections to it. We have the normal World Wide Web that you and I can access anywhere using any search engine like Google or Firefox.
Sure.
Then you have the deep web, which is going to be when people are logging into their own personal sites, like your personal bank account, you have to use authentication to get to that. Even though it's available on the web, I can't get into that without your info. Whereas the dark web is a place where it's pretty much anonymous. And so people can go out there and they can sell information to others. They can do illegal activities, and it's much, much harder to track because they have to use a specific search engine that basically blocks, or not, it doesn't block, but it reroutes their IP address through numerous spots. So it's not like someone could just see, oh, Denny went to XYZ website. Mm-hmm. And so that's what makes it scary for people, is that in the world we live in today is that people can easily take that personal information and then they can go to a spot where with pretty much no repercussions of someone knowing who's selling the info, they can sell your social, they can sell your bank account information, they can sell your personally identifying info. I mean, even to things such as, anything that has to do with you. It's not that, oh gosh, one person has it. It's now this one person and their entire Rolodex of all the other nefarious people they may be dealing with, the ability that they can now sell that. Wow. And so that's really when people talk to me about, is there a need for any type of identity theft protection? That's where I come back and I say, if you think about this 20 years ago when personal computers were first coming around, the thought of having virus protection, you're like, why would I pay for that? That seems silly. I'm not going to worry about that. Could you imagine doing anything on the internet today without having some type of firewall or virus protection on your computer? It's crazy. People are like, no way. There's no way I would do that. Well, that's where our world has kind of evolved to when it comes to identity theft protection, is that all of our information is out there. And so it's so important now to have that protected as best as possible. And just like virus protection isn't foolproof, there's still things that can slip through. It's the same with any type of identity theft protection as well. That doesn't mean you're invincible, but now you're taking as much steps as possible to protect yourselves. And there are things you can do to much more easily fix them if something goes wrong. That's really when I'm talking to clients, what we're talking to them about when it comes to looking at using identity theft protection service.
I bookmarked us at PCs because, what percentage of people are really just super duper internet savvy? I mean, there are some, but at the same time, I think there's a lot of folks that, well, it is my personal computer, it's mine, it's in my house, all is well. You probably have a little bit of that false sense of security.
I mean, I think we could use that with anything. I mean, anyone who's ever had their car broken into or their house broken into, you feel safe until you're not. And it's the same thing with this stuff. And one of the things I end up talking to people about is, and I think I might have mentioned this earlier, is I'll ask them, Denny, if somebody stole your identity today, how would you know about it until something bad happened? And most people, they would have no idea at all. No. And the other question I ask people is, Denny, what would it be worth to you to pay to protect that? Would it be worth $5, $10, $20? And for most people, there's this misconception that it's such an expensive thing. I know that the identity theft protection plans that our firm does, and again, we're not the only one. There's tons out there. Find the one that's right for you. But we start, I think it's $11 per individual, $22 for a household. And that household account covers husband, wife, and up to, I think, 8 kids. So when you're thinking about that, and that's a whole nother conversation, is people, you see minors who are at risk because someone will go out there, they will steal the minor's information, and the minor doesn't even know that there's anything wrong until the first time they go out to apply for something, whether that's a student loan and then they get denied. They're trying to get their own first apartment. I mean, think about that. You're a kid who's out there, just left mom and dad's house. You're maybe 18 to 20 years old, just trying to do your own thing, and now you've got to figure out how to fix your credit and your identity because someone stole it, when you were 5 years old, and it's been out there for years and years. You had no idea. That's the kind of things that we're trying to help people protect against when we're talking about this.
Yeah, well, since you briefly introduced that, let's just stay with that for a minute. In what other ways, or are the ways Primerica is working to reduce some of those risks, what you can offer.
Yeah, so Primerica, we have a partnership, and we have an identity theft protection program that basically monitors every aspect of someone's personal identifying information. So this could be something as simple, like we said, as bank accounts, credit cards. This can be it's court records. This is if people are applying for, new loans or, trying to apply to rent an apartment in your name or anything like that. And the firm that we partner with, they're constantly searching the deep web and they're constantly looking at what's happening out there to see if your numbers that you were monitoring are ever popping up. Because if you've got a 9-digit account number somewhere, and it's very unlikely that's just going to pop up randomly. But if those 9 digits come up in any one spot, well, we want to have something out there that's looking for that so that we can immediately identify that, let the client know, hey, this is out there. Once it's on the web, there's nobody out there that can stop it. It's out there. But what we can do is say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Client, this is out there. Let's go ahead and start proactively taking steps to let everyone that we need to know about this. And that way we can fix that, we can protect against any major damage. Now, and if there is damage, what our firm does is that basically we assign, you give someone a limited power of attorney with the firm that we partner with, and that they can then go out there and then they, on your behalf, can deal with restoring your identity to what it was prior to the incident. We have a $5 million guarantee, so that we will spend up to $5 million to restore everything to what it was prior to the incident happening. And it's huge. It's a huge benefit in that if you think of, let's just take any random Joe and Mary Smith person that exists today. We're all busy. We have jobs, we have kids, we have super important things. So, Denny, what though, as important as your job is, let's say is that if today you found out someone had completely hacked your identity and they had drained your bank accounts and you saw your credit score dip 200 or 300 points today, as important as this interview was, you would have called me to cancel it because you'd be like, Robert, I have to deal with this. I've got to. And your whole week might be ruined. You might have to take time off of work to just deal with that because it affects everything that's happening in your life. And that's the thing with this is that we want to help people protect against it. But then if something does happen, be able to pass that off to someone who can focus on that so you can focus on living your day-to-day life.
Well, I'm going to skip down to this one then based on what you just told me. What about red flags? Are there ever subtle indications that somebody's trying to get a hold of your information that might give you the opportunity to head it off before it's too late? So
the red flags that you would see that if you don't have this type of protection or from somewhere else, us or another provider, the things that you're going to see is if you see an immediate drop in your credit, that's going to be a red flag.
Credit score.
Yes, that would be a big red flag there. If you start getting calls from someone about debts saying that you owe them money that you have no idea about, that's going to be a red flag. And so what you can do there is that you're going to want to go ahead and just look at your credit report like we talked about. It's free to do. You can go to, I always get the site wrong. It's annual credit report. It's annualcreditreport.com. And they have completely free credit reports they'll give you from each one of the credit bureaus. Another thing is that and what you're looking at there is if you're going through your credit report, people ask, well, what do I even look at? You're just verifying the information's right. You want to verify your name's right. You want to verify your address is right. You want to verify that the accounts listed, you know what they are and are associated with. And then you'll be able to see when you look at your credit report, it's going to show you a historical payment record. And so if you see something and it's got a legend, it will tell you if something is bad and you see that there's something that all of a sudden just didn't get paid or something you don't recognize, huge red flag. And that's when you would go through and you would obviously want to get in touch with the credit bureau, which you can do through their websites. They all have pretty simple things to just file a dispute. So you would just go through that process. And then another great website when it comes to identity theft is identitytheft.gov. This is one of the few .govs out there that is really, really valuable because when you go in there, they have an easy to navigate webpage where you just type in what has happened, and then they will guide you through what are the steps that you can take. And it's listed checkbox by checkbox saying, when you call this person, ask for this, notate this, and you can follow the steps so that you don't feel like you're having to figure everything out. They've kind of laid the map out for you that you can kind of just walk through. And it's still frustrating. Don't get me wrong there. It's still, no one wants it to happen, but at least you're not figuring out where to even start. You're just running with a predetermined play.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll generate more interest of this part of the business or services you offer, Robert. But are more and more of your clients, reaching out and inquiring? They're getting more curious about coming to you, wanting to at least learn more about this feature?
Yeah, this is something that when we're going through the process of building someone's plan, it's something that we look at. It kind of falls into the other considerations box, but we definitely want to bring it up so that people are aware. And it's mostly people work so hard to get themselves in a financial position where they feel comfortable, and to not have something there to protect it, it just seems kind of silly. It's the same reason we have insurance for anything. We have auto insurance because we want our automobiles protected. We have life insurance, at least we should, and I think that's so important because if people are depending on your income, that it's important to make sure that those people are provided for. Well, you've worked so hard to build up, a solid financial position. Now, some people I talk to is like, man, I wish someone would steal my identity. There's nothing good there. They could have it all. Let me have the reset button. That'd be great.
Right.
But for people who have worked really hard to have great credit, to save some money, to put themselves in a position where them and their families are comfortable, you've worked really hard to do that. Why wouldn't you want to protect against someone coming in and taking everything that you've worked so hard for?
What advice can you give clients to just help reduce some of the risks ahead of time? And by that I mean you're not going to tell any of your clients never buy anything on Amazon.
Yeah.
Quit using your debit card for every single $2 purchase you make at a convenience store. But again, as we talked about early in the program, with more and more and more transactions like that's becoming commonplace. The more and more your numbers are out there. But is there anything that you can advise clients to help reduce the risks a little bit?
Well, the first thing I would say too, Denny, is that because there's more and more, that's actually not a bad thing, because that means that companies are taking more and more precautions because the companies have to eat it.
It's a good call. Yeah.
When this goes bad, if a bank has to give you your money back, that's expensive. So they're doing more and more to protect against it. So don't feel like you can't use your debit cards. The other thing is I really, really would encourage people to pay attention to your statements. I go through my statements. I mean, I look at my accounts probably every 2 to 3 days just to make sure there's nothing there that I don't recognize. I also go through and I look at my credit. Just because we were preparing, knowing that I was coming to this, I was like, let me just pull my credit again just so I have a refresher. And I went through and I got my free credit report and I just looked through it and you can see. And so those are the big things where you're going to identify if something has gone wrong or something you don't recognize. Other than that, consider purchasing an identity theft protection plan. Again, do your own research, find out if it's for you. They're not foolproof, but they're very, very helpful. And when you can go out as a young person, it costs $11 for an individual, young or old, doesn't matter. But as an individual, $11 to have someone monitoring that. You think about what you spend $11 on in a month. All of us, this is America. We blow money left and right,
Yeah.
So why not spend that? If you've got a family, for $22, you cover yourself, your spouse, and all your kids. Think about that. It might be worth it. Now, not everyone wants to do that, and that's fine. But it's a huge, huge help when I can just go to my phone. I've got an app where I can immediately, if something goes wrong, I get a notification. I can literally pull it up on my app, and they'll ask me, hey, this, and this happened. Was that you? Did you authorize this? I can set my preferences the way I want it. It's even monitoring my social media. So if someone hacks my social media and starts going off the cuff and I've marked what I want to be flagged. So if someone uses drug references, sexual innuendos, anything, maybe it's just me being an idiot and I didn't realize it, it's going to notify me because my reputation is everything, just like all of our reputations are. And so having that type of monitoring, I think, is worth it. And that's some of the things that I would consider the preemptive stuff you can do to monitor and protect yourself.
Well, I really appreciate you devoting a whole program to that one of the many features that you offer. But if folks want to get better acquainted with Robert Montes and Primerica, your contact information, including your new office.
My new office. So my office, I'm there by appointment. So if you stop by, you might miss me. But it's 2901 West Broadway, and we're suite number 210. Easiest way to get in touch with me is always through just calling me, 369-3396. Again, that's 369-3396.
Robert Montes with Primerica on Missoula Real Estate today. Great having you back. Let's do it again.
This goes by so fast every time. Thanks for having me.